Hi everyone. Hopefully you can all hear me okay. So welcome to this evening's event, What It Takes to Lead with Confidence, with the wonderful Monwara Ali. So this is our first event in this year's What It Takes Alumni Speaker Series for 25-26. And I'm Hayden, the Alumni Relations Manager at the University of Westminster. Thanks so much for joining us today, especially to all our students, recent graduates and alumni. You're in for a treat with Monwara. So tiny bit about me and the alumni team at Westminster. We're responsible for events like this, What It Takes, and a shout out to my colleague James, who's managed this all wonderfully. We do a lot of different things. It's quite a varied team. We're really fortunate to have lots of brilliant alumni, something like 200,000 in around 200 countries around the world. So lots of things going on. What we do a good job of, I think, is engaging with alumni for them to act as volunteers, particularly as speakers on programs like this, What It Takes. We also have a sister program called What Comes Next, which is more niche and tailored towards certain groups of students on courses, priority courses within timetabled teaching. We have another team which sits alongside us called the mentoring team. Some of you may mentor or be a mentee at Westminster. They do lots of good work connecting alumni with students as mentors or mentees. And then I won't waffle on too much longer. We do a lot of alumni benefits work, so we're not just taking the good time and goodwill from our alumni, but we give back with a range of benefits. I oversee all of our alumni communications. You probably see some newsletters, different events invites like the ones you would have received for this. We oversee parts of graduation with the first point of contact for alumni also, and we connect lots of alumni with others across the university, particularly with academics who might run lots of things within the classroom and beyond. So before I introduce Monwara, our lovely speaker, just some boring housekeeping bits. So as you can probably see, this talk is being recorded. It'll be edited and made available on our YouTube channel. When it's ready, we'll send you the link in a post-event email that will go out most likely early next week to you all. You'll also see that your cameras and microphones have been automatically turned off. We have to do that when we can have large numbers joining. It can get a bit hectic if we leave lots of mics and cameras on, as I'm sure you'll imagine. But the live general group chat is on, so please do use this, particularly to ask Monwara questions throughout. Then my colleague James and Mary, who are moderating the event with me, will collate all of those questions throughout the talk, and I'll put them to Monwara after the end of her keynote presentation. And you can use the group chat for anything else within reason. So I'm delighted to introduce our alumni speaker for today's talk, Monwara Ali. She will share her top tips on how to lead with confidence. Had the pleasure of meeting Monwara recently at an alumni awards celebration event, and she was a very deserved winner of the Lifetime Achievement Award this year within that. So Monwara graduated from Westminster in 1997 with an LLB in law, and is currently CEO for Waltham Forest Community Hub. That's a grassroots charity dedicated to empowering marginalised communities, and she's a leadership coach and consultant as well. Monwara, as I said, recently won the Lifetime Achievement Award within the 2025 Westminster Alumni Awards, which I should have mentioned we also oversee, along with our annual Alumni Volunteering Awards, which is important to celebrate all of our alumni and alumni volunteers. So during this talk, Monwara will discuss what it truly means to lead on change, both in the spaces we work and study, as well as within ourselves. And how it's going to work is, in a sec, I'll pass over to Monwara. She'll do her presentation, including some slides, which should run until probably latest 7:30, maybe a little bit before that. I'll come back online then for a Q&A, which I'll sort of moderate. So yeah, do put any questions as you have them in the general chat throughout the presentation, and I'll come back on at the end to put them to Monwara. So that's more than enough from me. So over to you, Monwara, and a huge thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Hayden. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Do bear with me because I will be presenting the slides in a minute, but I just feel it would be nice for you all to hear a small little intro about me before I go into the slides. So thank you for asking me to be here. It's a privilege after all these years to come back, and it has been a huge honor to win the Lifetime Achievement Award. As I said, I feel I'm too young to be winning a Lifetime Achievement Award, but hey ho, it's great to be recognized, and it gives me courage to believe that I could do more. So just a quick introduction about myself. Obviously, ex-university student like yourselves. I'm assuming there are lots of students here and lecturers and teachers as well. So currently I'm a leadership coach and consultant and a CEO of a charity, but I also am a director of a charity that I founded in 2021 to do some international development work. And just before I start my first slide and go into my presentation, I want to say that once upon a time, I thought education was beyond my reach because I was the first in my family to go to university. And I'm sure there are some of you here who may be in exactly the same situation as I was. There were no role models in my community. There certainly weren't any in my family. And so for me, the thought that education might be outside my reach was not unusual. I was born in Bangladesh, grew up in London, and I lacked confidence throughout my early education and working career because I grew up believing women should not be seen nor heard. So just a quick recap as well in terms of what I will cover. Hopefully, today I'll be able to structure my talk in three parts. First part would be primarily talking about how to lead yourself. Second part, how to lead others, and finally leading change. I hope that my presentation sticks to that structure. If not, apologies in advance. And yes, of course, I really welcome not just questions, but reflections at the end of my presentation. So I'm just going to pull up the presentation now.
Yeah, don't worry. It's not exactly a technical hitch, is it? There you go.
Okay. Yes. I mean, it's really, the slides are very, very basic. It's the content that follows the slide that's the most important thing. I think the session, the topic is what it takes to lead with confidence. And that confidence is very much around ourselves before we can start leading. It's very important for us to realize how much we lack or we hold confidence without realizing it. So my first slide doesn't really say much, except it's the beginning of making you think deeply about creating change and what does it mean. Always begins with ourselves in order for it to have a ripple effect around us. So that's just recognizing that I shared earlier, I didn't feel education was within my reach because of my own background and coming from a working class family where there was no role model for education. I then, at the age of 20, signed up and became a member of a management committee of a youth charity in Camden. I had no idea what I was doing at the time. I was very much encouraged by a couple of other members on the board who were a lot older than me. I was only 20 and I had no idea. Now, I, at the time, was nervous. I was scared because I wasn't sure what role I was supposed to fulfill. I yet took on that role, and it was a journey. I soon discovered that there is no manual and there is no perfect way of being a chair, because within 6 months of that role, I became a chair. I was voted as chair by some young people, and again, I was incredibly nervous and unsure of myself. My first public speech, I was shaking, but at the end of that public speech, I was able to raise £15,000 for the charity. So I guess when I think about it afterwards, I thought about it afterwards, that gave me confidence to know that even though I was nervous and I didn't quite know what I was doing, the result and the consequence of my action really made me feel like it was worth the nerves and it was worth trying. So equally for the second situation and event that I want to share with yourselves is in July 19, I did write it down in case I forget, 1995. Again, I signed up through the university for an internship in South Carolina and ended up in South Carolina working with prisoners on death row. Now, if anybody had told me I would have done that before, I would never have believed them. But I did. I signed up. I was studying my criminal justice module, and I got very lucky. I was fortunate enough to be picked. I applied and I got in, and I ended up in South Carolina. Again, it was a very harrowing experience. It was because I worked with those prisoners, some of whom I knew were going to die. One of my clients got executed during my time. I was there for 2 months. And what that experience taught me more than anything is, had I not applied, I wouldn't have had that opportunity, or I wouldn't have known if I'd get in. Firstly. Secondly, being there for 2 months taught me to appreciate what I had, the freedom, the liberty we had in the UK compared to the laws in South Carolina, and also getting to know some of the people, the prisoners, seeing the human side of those individuals who had committed crimes and they were waiting on death row. But it was just seeing that human side made me realize, that there is more to human, there is more to people, and we could have a lot more empathy than we generally do. So that was my second experience. Of course, I didn't have confidence to apply for either of those positions, or to end up being a chair, or to end up being on death row working with prisoners. But I got there because I took a risk. I was excited as well as afraid, and I did it because I knew it would be my way of breaking down barriers. If I believed, as a Bangladeshi female growing up in the 90s, that education was beyond my reach, then I would have believed that it would be so much more harder for me to be accepted in a professional setting. So I knew, or I always felt, that I had to pick up as much experience as possible. And those two were experiences, but they were, by far the most challenging experiences. And they have shaped me to become who I am. People often say you come across confident. We all have nerves. and we all lack confidence at times. But I think getting through an experience where you see at the end the benefits of that are far greater than the nerves you held at the beginning just makes you realize that you need to do more of that. So that's those two examples I give. And then I think what those two examples taught me as well about leading yourself is that in many of the roles, including the chair's role, I was advised to be a certain way. I was told it's not the right thing to do to go to South Carolina all on your own. Being a Muslim woman, I was told the area is full of rednecks. You're putting yourself at risk. And I was also told that I would struggle to cope. So when at the top of this slide, I've got the heading authenticity, self-trust, and adaptability. I think those are three things within us as skills that then help shape us in our leadership journey, whether it's a personal journey or the career, because people will tell you what you should do in a particular role. But when you follow your own gut instinct and you do what you feel is the right thing to do, it becomes obvious to others and it has a ripple effect. So it encourages other people to be authentic as well. Self-trust in this context is, I think, what I'm trying to encourage you to do is to think about your own belief in yourself. How did I know I could survive in South Carolina? All I can say is, without going into too much detail, is that I struggled with my GCSEs and I told myself I was going to study law at the age of 14. I was discouraged by teachers. My head of English in my secondary school said, you'll probably end up repeating your GCSE because Bangladeshis are underachievers. And so it wouldn't be, unusual for you to have to repeat your GCSE. That just made me push myself so much harder. And I worked so hard to make sure that I got the grades I needed to get into my A levels, and I achieved. And I think that is self-trust. It's believing in yourself to push yourself to get there, to actually do what you need to do to get the results you want. So that's why I think to lead yourself is so important, to not only be honest and authentic, but also to trust yourself. And I think one of the biggest barrier, apart from the external barriers where people tell you you cannot do this and you will not achieve or succeed, I think the other far greater barrier is the barrier within us. The negative thoughts, the mind that tells us that we can't, even without having tried. So I think it's very important that we are not affected by those negative thoughts, and also to trust ourselves. And I think one exercise that I would advise you to do is to really close your eyes and reflect back to the times in your childhood where you didn't have anyone else to help you, and yet you managed to achieve or get out of a very, very difficult situation on your own. And if I give an example, it's when I was 18 and I was at college, and I took a direct marketing job, which was quite challenging. And I remember at the time thinking, I want to give up. And it was an environment which was male dominated. I stood out like a sore thumb, and I overheard a couple of the men putting on bets he won't last long. It was a 2 month summer holiday job, but all it took was for me to overhear two men saying I would, the maximum she will last, they said, would be a week or 2 weeks. That just encouraged me to stick by and do that job for 2 months, even though it was painful. I was doing a lot of carrying, heavy lifting stuff. And my father tried to discourage me. He tried to make me stop, but I wouldn't. So I think in context of this self-trust bit that I'm talking about when it comes to leading yourself is, I know I got through that time, those 2 months. And when I sometimes get in a situation where I feel I can't do something or it feels really difficult, I just trust myself to do it because I've done it before. Even if it was a different context, I know that I had the resilience once and it's not gone away, it's still there. So trusting yourself, that self-belief is very, very important to leading oneself. And then lastly, I would say adaptability. And I can give two examples of adaptability. One, I think personally was really, really difficult for me to adapt when I got married and I was still studying. I was in the second year of my law degree and I had to juggle work as well as study. I think that was really difficult for me. And I also had the second time when I had my child, I was working full time and I was doing my legal practice course. I had to take a day out of my work uh, just to study from 9 in the morning till 9 in the evening. And I was able to adapt. I mean, there are lots of things we tell ourselves we cannot do. But when it comes to the crunch, we somehow manage. So professionally, again, the adaptability was when I took on my current role, I literally walked in and I was offered fundraising consultant role 1 day a week. And at the time, I needed more. And I thought to myself, well, this is close to home. Let me give it a go. 15 years later, I'm still there. I'm then a CEO now. And I think as the CEO, the biggest adaptability in my career has got to be COVID. When our doors shut, all our funding ended, and I had to find a way of saving everyone else's job. That was hard. And at times, when we furloughed 75% of our staff, it was just myself and other staff, the 25% of us that kept the whole service running, which meant I was sometimes working like 7 days a week to keep things together because we didn't want to let down our service users. So yes, adaptability is important to leading oneself. If you can't be honest to yourself and you can't trust yourself and be adaptable, it becomes very, very difficult then to lead others. So it's very important that we lead ourselves first before we go on to lead others. Right, this slide. So I have a question. Maybe you might want to put the answers in the chat for later for Q&A, but how do you reconnect to your confidence when things feel uncertain? I just shared an example of uncertainty where I had no idea whether or not I was going to finish my education. I had no idea whether or not our charity was still going to stand after COVID. And yes, I did start to doubt myself, because I'm human. And I think when you look at somebody who has the title of CEO or leader, it's very easy to make that assumption that we know everything or we have it all figured out. And I think what I have learned on my journey is that it's the not knowing. The people who can navigate uncertainty are the ones that thrive at the end of it. Because uncertainty is a really, really scary thing. And I think in a leadership role, your confidence is going to be tested in so many ways, and you have to find ways to keep that confidence up because others are looking to you. So my journey of learning, and I'm going to go on to the next slide, started exactly with that, facing uncertainty. And I'll start off with a mountain climb in 2018. So I am not a climber or even a person who is great with fitness. Yet in May 2018, I climbed Snowdon with my team to raise money for charity. And when I started the climb, leading up to it, I spent a very long number of weeks walking, exercising, trying to make sure the joints were moving. And we did a lot of practice runs with the team, only so that we could make sure that when the time came to climb that mountain, we would have the fitness levels. I didn't know whether I could climb Snowdon. I did. And not only did I climb Snowdon, I took a team of 13 with me. It was scary. And what nobody knew before the Snowdon climb is that I have a fear of heights. So I was really scared. I couldn't look down. A lot of the time I had to pretend because I was conscious that my behavior might affect and influence the rest of my team. And there were some very, very individuals that really struggled. Learners, they were just like myself, and I didn't want to have any negative influence on them. So I had to pretend, and a lot of the times I stayed behind instead of going ahead. One, because I didn't have the fitness level, and two, because I really didn't want people to see how I was feeling. But I think my game was up by the time I got to the top. Everyone kind of discovered that I had a major, major fear of heights. So yeah, that was my journey, because I discovered when I got to the top that I could do it. Even with the fear of heights, I could get to the top of the mountain. The mountain itself was the challenge, and climbing that mountain meant climbing my fear and overcoming my fear. So for me, that was really important, but also because we were doing it as a fundraiser. Now, that learning experience then developed a desire and I think confidence in me to believe I could do more. So in September 2019, I did a 5K rough runner with my team, and we did amazing, because it was such a fun experience, but again, very scary. The travelator was hard. It was really tough. I was the last one standing, yet I managed to get to the top with a bit of help. By the time I got to the top, or before I got to the top, everyone was cheering. They were waiting to close, and I was holding everyone back. Yet I did it. I even till this day, it's a surreal feeling that I actually did the 5K rough runner. And years before, in my 20s, I used to always imagine that I could do it. And at that time, I was maybe half the weight I am now. So in 2019, to be able to achieve that was a massive thing for me. And we then raised money, again, funds for charity. And then in 2022, September, I climbed Ben Nevis with an entirely different group of individuals. So these are people that signed up to go on the Ben Nevis Challenge with me to do the fundraiser. We were able to raise funds to build 2 houses for vulnerable women in Bangladesh, widows and divorcees who have children, they're single parents, but don't have a roof over their head. They live in makeshift shelters. That's the picture you can see on the slide. That's one of the houses. One of the ladies, she was living in a makeshift shelter, which we then pulled down and were able to build a home for this lady from the Ben Nevis climb. But I didn't get to the top of Ben Nevis, you know. It was heartbreaking for me that I didn't get to the top. Sometimes the challenge is more than just us getting to the top. I think this is where leadership transitions to a different level. When we go from leading ourselves to leading others. At Ben Nevis, I didn't get to the top, but the majority of the team did. I had problems with altitude. I was very dizzy, feeling sick. I had glucose tablets given to me. I had a first aider with me the whole time because I kept wanting to fall asleep. I really struggled, and I think my fitness levels weren't that great. But I think what happens to us on a mountain is, in the end, our anxieties win. Our nerves and our anxieties win. The weather was terrible that day, and I already had a lot of anxiety. And I think my lesson learned was something I was able to then put into practice the following year. I'll go on to that later. But there were lessons that I learned from Ben Nevis, not being able to get to the top, that I was able to then adapt and redo practice in a different way. So lastly, in 2023, I just to give you a flavor of when you challenge yourself and you push yourself and you begin to realize that you can do much more than you initially thought you could, and also what others told you you could. That then, in a lot of ways, catapults you to do more. And I went on after the Ben Nevis climb to set up sewing classes in Hazinagar, Bangladesh. And at the same time, organized another mountain climb. So I'm going to share with you a couple of very short videos about the mountain we climbed in. So we climbed a mountain in 24 called Schachberg in Austria. And then we climbed a mountain in May this year called Warsaw. Let me see if I can just get that. Can everyone see this? Can you?
Yeah, that's loaded.
Okay, let's see if you can see it that way.
Yeah, that played just quickly. Yeah, it wasn't any sound, but we've got the picture for sure. Looks, I can see how steep it looks.
Okay, not to worry. I will share the links. So that was the 2 mountains. One in 24, and the one that I just showed was the mountain climb earlier this year. So let me just get back to the slides. So yes, back to the slides and back to the mountain climb in Austria. One of the things I learned from the Ben Nevis climb and not being able to get to the top was making sure that I had the right support. And so before we organized a trip to a mountain climb to Austria, so these are people who signed up to go on the mountain climb to raise money for charity. We had I managed to connect with someone called Catherine Reed, who was based in Austria. She was a LinkedIn connection, and I knew that she was a mountaineer and bit of an expert, a scouts leader. And I kind of figured out what I need more than anything to get to the top of that mountain is an expert by my side. So when we planned the mountain climb last year, we went to Schafberg. You can actually find all these videos on my YouTube channel. I've got the link later as well. Catherine was the person who stayed at the end. There was 7 of us in 24. And this year rather, in May, there was 8 of us. And both times we went to 2 different mountains. I was able to get to the top because Catherine was there to guide me. I do have a massive fear of heights. That fear has never gone away, I think, contrary to what I believed. I was led to believe that if you climb a mountain or you face the fear, you end up overcoming it forever. But I discovered that you don't. You still have the fear, and you just have to put systems in place and mechanisms in place so that you can ride that fear each time. So, not knowing whether I'm going to get to the top of either of those mountains, I knew that I had Catherine by my side. I knew that I was doing this mountain climb for charity. And also, I believed, because I had done quite a bit of walking and trekking and rehearsals and practice beforehand, I believed that I could do it. In this case, I handled the fear by making sure I had somebody who was very confident and expert and knew exactly. She was observing my every move. She was guiding me. She was telling me what to do and what not to do. So that was really, really helpful. And I think the question I would ask yourselves, which might help with Q&A later, is to think about how you handle the fear of uncertainty. Because I think the fear of uncertainty is where most of us give up. Sometimes we don't even try. So we never get started because we are afraid. We don't know whether we'll finish something or whether we'll get to the top of the mountain. So the fear of the uncertainty itself may often stop us. So then I go on to talk about leading others. Both of those mountain climbs were about leading others. And I think my career as a CEO has also taught me that once you are in leadership role and you are able to lead yourself, you tend to inspire others to also lead themselves and trust you when you're in that leadership role. And I think that comes from 3 things in a leadership role. To lead others, you need to be someone who promotes inclusion. And when I say inclusion, I don't just mean, regardless of what background you come from. I think it's about recognizing difference, but also recognizing that because we're all different, our needs are going to be different. And so therefore, in your when you're trying to lead others, you need to be able to cater for people's different needs. And when we cater for people's different needs, we create a space of inclusion. And people feel that they can be open, they can be vulnerable about their differences. They could be honest about their needs. Otherwise, we can't read people's mind, and people aren't always going to feel confident about sharing what they need. And we may not easily recognize a person's skill set. It's hard to delegate. It's hard to convince people, persuade people, or win trust if you cannot yourself create a space where people feel comfortable, show empathy, be human. And I think when you're trying to lead others, it's no longer about demonstrating how good you are in your leadership role. Everything changes, you transition, and most of my journey has been trying to lift others. So to create leaders and to lead others, it's a responsibility to then make sure that every opportunity you get, you are lifting other people, giving them the platform via your using your power. So I think if I were in my just taking some of my leadership roles, I'm a co-chair of Waltham Forest Voluntary and Community Service Leadership Group and sector leadership group. And one of the things I always feel in that role, and also my role at the Chartered Institute of Fundraising, where I was the chair of the EDI committee, I've always felt my role is not about being really loud as a chair or being outspoken. It's been about making sure who's not getting their voice heard. So to be able to lead others, you need to be able to figure out, watch and observe to see, okay, who is not getting their word in edgeways? What can I do using my position to make sure that they're getting the platform, they're getting equal space like everyone else? And I think that is what I mean when I say creating space for others to speak. I have certainly created lots of spaces. An example of that would be April 23, I think 2 years in a row, we recruited a group of young women, and they organized a dinner and dance where, again, it was a fundraiser and they raised money to build homes for vulnerable women. But it was a group of young women aged 16 plus. And my first meeting with these young women, I asked them, do you know who's going to be making the decisions? And they were like, just, there was no answer. And I said, you're going to make the decisions. It wasn't a huge budget that I organized this through the other charity work that I do as director of Stowe Inspire. So we encourage and empower young women to transform them into leaders. That space was created, that program, that project was created so young women could have the opportunity to learn leadership, to learn fundraising. And it's been a fantastic experience so far. We've managed to help more than 25 young women over the last couple of years. So that's been fantastic. Yes, so leading others, to be inclusive, to empower people by lifting them, and also hold have a level of empathy, understand that everybody's not in the same situation. We have no idea what background people come from, what their challenges are, what battles they are fighting. Just to be human about it all and give people the confidence to come and be honest about themselves. It makes it so much more easier. Then you build that relationship where people trust you and you can lead them. The last, I think, on this slide, I've got the alliance. That's something that I've helped to coordinate last year. A year ago, we set up an alliance called Black and Asian-led Organizations Alliance. And that's very small local Black and Asian organizations in Waltham Forest, a networking space, but also where people can collaborate and do partnership working. So that was just another example of leading others. People have, many people are not comfortable with the word leader. So, but if you change the word leader to, or leadership to responsibility, somebody has to take responsibility, an ultimate responsibility for coordination, for making sure something happens. And that is usually either the CEO or whoever, the chair. Even if the word leader feels too much power connotations to it, I think it's important to recognize that it is about responsibility more than power. So the alliance would not come about had I not been spearheaded that initiative. It wasn't me alone, there were other people, but I think the point I'm trying to make is you can lead others if they trust you. Those small groups know of me, know of my work, and knew each other. So it was so much more easier to bring everyone together. Just at this point, I would ask you this question, because leading others is about making sure that you are creating a space where people feel seen and heard. And I give an example, and I asked you this question: who's made you feel truly seen? Because that individual has done to you what you then end up doing for others. So for me, the realization that I've had male allies in my life, starting with my father and then my husband, my son, and then professionally, I've got a photo here with Yoga Cabra. He's my chair at Waltham Forest Community Hub. My team, the picture on the right is my entire team at the Community Hub, a very inclusive, diverse team, very passionate, and we all love what we do, serving the community of Waltham Forest. I think they've all made me feel seen. And that's why I think in my leadership journey, I've gone on to create spaces for others in the same way. The mountain climb was one of those. The Young Women's Trailblazer program, where the women are learning leadership skills and fundraising, is another one of those. The mountain climb is also an opportunity where people can be seen and heard, to be making a difference in the world. Because when they're fundraising, we are suddenly, the spotlight is going on the vulnerable women in Bangladesh for whom we're doing it. And I think it's really important for you to also think about who has made you feel truly seen. And because that is something that then makes you realize, okay, that's what I need to be doing. So that was my lesson, my learning, that I need to do for others. And I think for a very long time, I didn't even realize. There were very few female. If I were to think of role models who encouraged me or supported my journey. I think most of the female role models have come afterwards. I've always felt like the trailblazer, the person who starts something that nobody else is doing. Or maybe because, and it goes on to the next slide and my last point around making change, because once you know that you can lead yourself and then you start to lead others, you also start leading change. You know how to, or you understand the value of leading change. 1 second. Let's see this last page. Okay, that's better. So on this sort of last, before my last slide, this is last to my final slide. Leading change, that happens naturally as a consequence of you developing confidence and courage in yourself. Because once you've gone through the process of leading yourself, that growth and then leading others ultimately leads to action. So I'm not talking about just big change. I'm talking about small bits of courage that you repeat on a regular basis. What can you do? What's a brave action you could take this week towards the change you want to see, is what I would like you to think about, having heard some of what I've shared. So the pictures here on your left is some of the girls. As I said, in 23, I set up sewing classes in a village in Bangladesh called Hazinagar. And these young women, as young as 14, this year I went to visit earlier last month, and I saw girls as young as 12. There are 31 approximately villages in one union and one area, and we have about 7 or 8 villages, girls from 7 or 8 villages attending. We had our certificate of achievement event when I went last month, and we handed out 34 certificates. These are recent graduates. The interesting thing about these two pictures is the one on the left, the girls are not exactly all the same as the ones on the right, but some are the same. So sometimes the barriers are so great, yet you can make small changes in whatever way you can think of, even if the barriers are so great. I'm sharing these two pictures because the one on the left was taken a year and a half ago, where the girls were okay to have photos taken like that. And then when we had the certificate of achievement event, they all decided to dress up and cover themselves, and all you could see was their eyes, the photo on the right. It's a bit of a culture shock. It shouldn't be, because I guess I was born in Bangladesh. I've been backwards and forwards. I know what the culture's like. It's not an Islamic country, but I think 70 to 75% of the population is Muslim. But it's not about Islam. I think it's more about the risks we put the girls in if they are seen on social media and other places. I was told by the teacher that a neighboring village man had put in a complaint to one of the girls' fathers for being visible in public. And so when I went to visit them this time for the certificate of achievement, I was really surprised that they all had themselves covered in that way. But I really do understand. I think that leadership role, where you have to be responsible for others, means that you have to protect them. So in this case, the teacher was protecting. She actually had all those niqabs to face the veils to cover their faces done, to prevent them from being told off or getting into trouble with their family. I mean, we know we've heard of honor killing. I don't think that, we just don't know. It could be anything as drastic as that. But I think when you are responsible, you just want to make sure that you are protecting. So I think in my little way, I'm leading change by still doing it. So we still had a public celebration of achievement, even though the girls had niqabs on, because they deserve it. And I think it's very important that we recognize their achievement. Recognition goes a long way. I think my own personal recognition that I could climb a mountain then developed and went in, led to other things. So I think with many of these girls, I like to think that one day they're all going to achieve in a massive way. And I feel like in whatever small way, one tiny little brave action that we took or continue to take is making a difference. So on that point, I will finish. And I just want to say, lastly, just encourage you to keep leading the change, whatever change you're making. I'm not going to stop, because I know what my capability is. And I know that if I can inspire change in others, nothing gives me more joy to see the world a better place. And I think what I would sincerely hope that you take away from this talk today is a commitment to growth. I would love for you to think about where you need to maybe start building courage, and one little brave step that you would take this week to make a change. So that's enough from me. Thank you very much for listening, and over to you, Hayden.
Thanks, Monwara. Yeah, that was very powerful, very profound and personal, and authentic. So yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. Yeah, you took us on a real journey throughout some very important moments in your life, in your leadership and confidence journey. So yeah, huge thanks. I think everyone might be a bit mesmerized, so we haven't had too many questions in the chat yet, but I've got some questions that I can put to you that we've got ready. But yeah, encourage anyone to pop questions in the chat about Monwara's journey, about leadership, confidence, or anything really around that topic. She's obviously got lots and lots of experience, both professionally and personally. So yeah, let's see. If I look at some on advice for others, so what maybe just some key bits of advice would you give to young people, maybe young women, especially students, recent graduates in the audience, who want to become leaders in the non-profit world, how to sort of go about that from student or recent graduate position?
Okay. I think to begin with, also, if you've just recently graduated, you haven't picked up any experience, then the first point of call would be to do some volunteering. But I think, apply for jobs. There are many times where I could have done a better job than the next person who applied for a leadership role. I just didn't have the courage. I didn't have the self-belief I had later. But I think when you are a new graduate, you compare yourself a lot to what you think the competition is. I can tell you that at my point in my career, I've met lots of people leading projects and initiatives who maybe somebody else could do a better job. I know it's going to sound controversial, but there is no such thing as being fully experienced. I've been in one role for 15 years. I probably am the best in it because I've been practicing it for 15 years. I think my point is, whatever you do, you become better at it over time. You've got to get started at some point. So the first point is always going to be about taking risk. If you can find someone who can mentor you or coach you, that makes a huge difference. It's something that you can, like, a lot of the times it costs money, but there are ways that you can get this without having to pay for it. Like, for example, the university mentoring scheme. I used to be a mentor for London Youth. I was a mentor for the Chartered Institute of Fundraising. And a lot of the times I would get a couple of charity leaders to mentor, to support with governance and fundraising. So there are ways that you can barter, like exchange your skill. If you have a skill, offer that to somebody else who may be a charity leader, somebody in the area that you want to go into, and they'll be able to guide you through that process.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. Great advice. We've had a question from Francesca, which is, do you think there are qualities for leading others that are important to possess naturally, or can it come with experience? I know that bleeds into what you've just said somewhat, but yeah, that's Francesca's question.
Okay, thank you, Francesca. It's what I think. I mean, I don't think that I have possessed. Maybe I have learned more about my own qualities. I would say, to be a better leader, you need to learn who you are and what you bring to the table. Because if you don't know what your strengths are and what your skills are, you can't leverage them, you can't utilize them. And that is usually a disadvantage for you. So I think a lot of it comes with experience, but some of us naturally have certain talents. So, for example, me, I'm just generally a people's person. And for a long time, I didn't know that. And I didn't realize until I got I started rising in my leadership roles, when I realized, oh, this is a hugely needed skill set. And I have an advantage. Whereas before, I thought, I'm too nurturing, I'm too nice, I'm too caring. But I think once I realized, and I think top tip, Francesca, there are some personality tests like the Myers-Briggs that could really help you. And there are others as well, like in the leadership world, which will give you a better idea, indicate what your skill sets are. So you can play to what is your natural strength. Sometimes that could be people skills. Other times it could be, I don't know, you're analytical, or you have an eye for detail. Like, if you have an eye for detail, you're definitely going to be a great fundraiser. If you've never done fundraising, I would highly recommend you do, because I didn't want to, but I went on to do a fundraising qualification, and I know that instantly added, quite a few £1,000s on my salary, because fundraising is a huge skill to have in the not-for-profit sector. So definitely recommend that. People skills, fundraising skills, and just, I think if you're going to volunteer, then you'll be picking up the experience anyway. Nothing like volunteering. I started volunteering because I thought, no one's going to give me a job. I need experience. And one day I realized my CV was 4 pages long. I was only like 24 at the time, and then I had to cut back. So I don't know if I've answered your question, Francesca, but I've rambled a bit. Sorry.
Oh, you definitely answered it very well and fully as well. So yeah, excellent stuff. We've got one in from Lesiane. Apologies if I'm getting your name pronounced incorrectly. It happens to me a lot. I know how that feels. But she or they have said, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. Beautiful work that you do. So Monwara, you're constantly inspiring and uplifting others. What helps you to stay motivated yourself, especially on the more challenging days?
I think time to myself sometimes. I'm very mission driven. I think, like I said earlier, like know what your skill sets are, what your strengths are. I think I realized I am externally driven. So when my mental health is not great, we're only human. There'll be hard, challenging times. I think what has helped me and continues to help me is reminding myself why I'm doing it. If when you're mission driven, externally driven, you kind of have your eye on the prize, the end goal. And that I know I've realized being in one company for 15 years, where literally when I started, we had 2 staff and now we have 16. I know what it took and how long it took. It makes me realize that resilience, I think I just remind myself of the hard times that I've been through before, knowing that I can do it again. I think that's what motivates me. But I don't want to undermine or discredit the fact that I have a supportive husband as well. And I have both my children are really supportive as well. My son, who is a physicist, and my daughter, who's studying psychology. So I think having good people around you makes a difference. I think I avoid negativity a lot. I'm I'm very good at motivating others, but like self motivation is a lot more harder.
Yeah, definitely. I can relate to that a lot. And thanks for your answer. I think, like you said earlier, being the first person in your family and around you to go into higher education, and without any real role models in the family, and yet you've not only obviously excelled in your professional life, but to have built a kind of network, if you like, of family and your own family around you, to be a role model for them and to get strength from them as well is yeah, a real blessing, really, isn't it? So we've got a question from Rose, which is, "Hi, Monwara. Do you have any advice for navigating burnout and ensuring that you complete goals and ideas in a way that is kind to yourself and in a way that leads with confidence? Thank you so much." Smiley face.
If I had to describe Rose, if I had to describe what leading with confidence, another way to describe it, I would say being honest. And I learned to be honest with my team. When you say to avoid burnout, it took me a long time to realize, because I am externally driven, and my energy levels can go really high because I know how much I can achieve. I could have 3, 4 different projects, but what I learned to avoid burnout, and thankfully I haven't yet burnt out, is to delegate better, and to lean on others. It took me a long time to realize that maybe it's my conditioning, the way I grew up, that, as an Asian woman, you had to be a good mother, a good wife, and there were certain responsibilities you had to fulfill. So for me, I put a lot of pressure on myself, thinking, if I can't be a good wife and I can't be a good mother, I can't be doing this full-time job, which I really enjoyed as well. I soon learned that I should be leaning on my husband more. And all those ideas were actually more an internal thing because of the way I'd grown up, conditioned in that way. There was nobody, my husband didn't say, "Oh, I expect you to do the cooking," or "I expect you to do household chores." Neither did my children. In fact, my children kept saying, "Mum, you don't need to do so much." But I kept saying, "I feel guilty." So I think, to avoid burnout, one of the things that's a massive personal to me, I reflect almost every single day. And I have to say, that's probably my biggest tool in my armor. If you can reflect at what happens during your day, sometimes if you do it on a daily basis, you can undo some of your own damage. And I think it takes a lot of unlearning, because we develop habits that we just do naturally without thinking. And when you start reflecting, you realize, oh, I've just done that habit that I said I wanted to change. So I think that really helps towards burnout, because a lot of it is created by our own thoughts, our own beliefs around how and what we are expected to do. My bosses kept telling me I shouldn't do so much, and I thought I wasn't listening. And then when I started taking a step back and my team started doing more, I realized I wasn't listening. So, I mean, I'm just being as honest as I can be, Rose. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it's fantastically honest. Yeah, I know that it definitely will be helping Rose and others, I'm sure, on the call. So let's see. We'll see if we get some more in the chat. Please do put your questions, keep them coming. Let's see what else we've got. More advice for others. Bit of a big one, perhaps, but if you could go back in time, what would you tell your younger self? We could narrow that down to this kind of leadership and confidence context, or you could interpret it however you like.
My younger self, I would tell my younger self to believe that I could be paid more, to ask for help. I would have told my younger self to actually take some of those big roles where I said no. There's a couple of opportunities I said no to because I thought I couldn't do it. I would definitely tell my younger self to do that. And I think, yeah, perhaps I would try to focus more on me years ago. I think, to be entirely I guess honest, it wasn't until my 40s that I realized I need to put me first. And I think it's a common problem I've worked with so many people where they are externally driven, and I think also understanding that many of us experience trauma. It's not just childhood trauma, it's everything that we go through in life. And when we are in positions of responsibility, we often ignore our emotions and we're not actually dealing with them. And that can then culminate into problems later on. And I think I was very much autopilot up until my 40s. Only in my 40s, I started going inwards, introspection. So if I knew what it was then, it'd be a different story, if that helps.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks. And James has just put in, it's a shameless plug. It's another event we've had in this series on burnout, what it takes to avoid burnout, sustainable energy for work and life. So it's not just for Rose, but for anyone who's interested, that's in the chat. I'll just put a link to the event page that it's associated with, so you can read more about that if you so wish. And let's see.
Hayden, I just want to add, I think because I read a lot of books about leadership, and most of the books said it's a lonely place at the top. I think society conditions us to believe that we have to be alone. And this is what causes burnout a lot of the time. I know it's very common in the voluntary sector, and I've advocated to make change where I've recommended that you have co-CEOs and co-chairs so that the workload is shared, the responsibility is shared. I think it's important to recognize, to avoid burnout, you also need people who really get where you're at. So, like, for example, I'm a member of the Association of Chairs. So I know there are other people in the same professional field as me that I can talk to if things get too much. And it's always so helpful to listen to another perspective.
Fantastic. Yeah, couldn't agree more. And we've had another one come in from Christine, question from the chat. It says, can you talk again about how you can get your confidence back to move forward? So I'm guessing once it's gone temporarily, how do you get it back?
I think it's important to recognize what caused it. And then I think several of the examples I've given have been challenges where you've stretched yourself. Getting the confidence back often will be it will be associated with people. And I think finding people that believe in you and encourage you and motivating, I know it's going to sound a bit cheesy, but the people around you matters more than you know. And getting your confidence back is just like finding the right people that will cheer you on and be the positive support as opposed to whatever negative experience you've had in the past. I think loneliness, if I were to identify one of the biggest problems, I think it's loneliness. Especially when it comes to mental health. And we work with a lot of people, older people, and it's the feeling of loneliness is what affects our mental health more than anything, where we feel like there is no way out, there's no one I can talk to, there's no one who will understand. That does make it so much more harder. So if you've lost your confidence, you've felt like that before, you need to find a way so that you're not actually feeling like that anymore. You're surrounded by people that are positive and that can help you. Be around confident people. If I'm to, just say it in one sentence, be around confident people. They will lift you.
Thanks, Monwara. Another excellent answer, very heartfelt and quite practical also. I've asked James, poor James, to find another event we did on loneliness that was quite some time ago in person, either pre or post COVID. I can't remember. We've done so many over the years in this What It Takes series. But let's see, we've got another good question from Rose. So it starts with, thank you for your advice. Would you mind sharing your journey on how you found like-minded people who wanted to work with you on or in your organization at the beginning, maybe even before you had a firm idea of what you wanted to do? She's put, thank you.
So, I mean, I've got a lot of things. I think like-minded people attract each other. There are lots of partnership projects I've started in the last 4 years, purely from people I've connected on LinkedIn. Catherine Reed, who has been a partner in the Austrian mountain climb, we just watched I would watch what she would write about, and a lot of it I could relate to. I could tell she was a people's person. I could tell she had a youth background from the stuff she started posting on a professional network like LinkedIn, and vice versa. I was doing similar, and we connected, and then we met, and we've been doing work together for the last 2 years. And I think people instantly attract. I think it takes a certain level of vulnerability. You have to be vulnerable to be authentic openly in public. And I think I ended up on a visibility journey in 2020 when COVID hit, and maybe I was close to burnout because I was doing so much. But I also realized that, people only knew me as CEO of the community hub, and take that title away, who am I? So it suddenly occurred to me that I had to find other people, and I had to almost build my own brand. So I've been on LinkedIn since 2020, and then like funny, but recently on my travels in Bangladesh, I went on TikTok and I just dipped my toes. Your like-minded people will find you because, and not just because of your professional title. They'll find you because they like what you say. You're going to have similar views, you're going to have similar opinions. And that's how I've built connections on LinkedIn. And within 14 days, I ended up with 1,000 followers on TikTok. And I don't even know what I did. But I think it's that idea that, like-minded people naturally just find each other. But Rose, it's a long game, is what I'm going to say. It's nothing happens overnight. I've just had a special an award for a special recognition award by our local authority, and that's after being in one role for 15 years. I didn't get it for doing something that was recognized in 2 years. It's 15 years. So I think people know and recognize like-minded people will find you and you will find them, but you've got to be patient, and you have to persevere.
Oh, excellent. Thanks. And I think I spoke too soon when I mentioned a loneliness event, because we didn't record that one because one of the speakers didn't feel comfortable with it, understandably, at the time. But I'm going to put a link in the chat, which is to all the recorded What It Takes we have from the series, because a lot of the topics you're mentioning, Monwara, resilience, leadership, burnout, there's a lot in there that we have over the years, but building on your excellent answers. And yeah, that's unless anything comes in the chat, I could just do one more quick question before I wrap up, seeing as we've got 3 minutes, if that's all right. And it might be hard to put into simple words, but how would you describe your leadership style, Monwara? It might have developed obviously a lot, but how would you say it is or has been the main sort of 2 or 3 parts to it? Big question.
I think adaptable is what it took me a long time to realize. You don't lead people how you are, you lead people how they want to be led. And in which case you have to almost apply situational leadership at times, and at other times inspiring leadership, and at other times you've got to, be a bit of a maverick. There's a lot going on, and I think I've become a bit of a chameleon because of my experiences and taking those roles. I think that working across Scotland, Wales, and England, that certainly opened my eyes. For a visibly Muslim woman in the EDI space, I have no idea what I'm dealing with from the LGBTQ plus community, because I don't have that lived experience. And I can almost imagine the perceptions I'm going to face. But I took that brave step because nobody else would. And I think that's the thing. I think my leadership is brave. That's certainly the style. I'm not afraid to go where no one else has been before.
Brilliant. I think that sums up. We've got lots of thank yous coming in the chat, but that sums up a lot of your talk and your answers, I think, to the questions. Very inspiring, very inspirational, and quite raw, which isn't always the case with people with such leadership experience over such a already long and fruitful career and diverse career. So yeah, huge thanks, Monwara. Your presentation has been excellent, and the answers to all the questions has been brilliant as well. So huge thanks for your insights and advice. You'll see, everyone, that James has put in a couple of times the feedback survey form. We really appreciate, we would really appreciate, if you could fill that in so we can get some good feedback and learn and grow for anything constructive. And we will email you post-event, probably early next week, with a copy of Monwara's slides and a copy of the recording, which will go up on our YouTube channel. And finally, the next What It Takes in the series is coming up on the 20th of November. I'll just put the link to it there in the chat. It's called What It Takes to Build a Business with Purpose. It's another online one, 20th of November. So yeah, once again, Monwara, a huge thanks. We're bang on time, but we really appreciate it. And yeah, a big thanks from everyone at Westminster, and good luck with all your immediate next steps. And we'll be in touch, of course.
Thank you. Thank you to the audience. Have a good evening.
You too. See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.